The black janitor had noticed the symptoms everyone else ignored and ended up saving the life of a millionaire CEO. The executive elevator at Manhattan Business Tower had never stopped on the 25th floor at 3:00 in the morning. But that night, Arthur Washington, night watchman and janitor for 15 years, stood staring through the tinted glass of the boardroom as a woman collapsed onto a mahogany table worth more than his annual salary. It was Monica Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries and one of the most powerful women in America. She was clearly in danger, her face twisted in pain, her left arm hung limp, and when she tried to speak into her phone, only garbled sounds came out. Arthur immediately recognized the signs. A stroke was unfolding before his eyes. Now 52, Arthur had learned medicine the hard way. His late wife Dorothy had been a neurology nurse for over 20 years before she died in an accident 5 years earlier. During their decades-long marriage, Dorothy had turned every dinner into a crash course in emergency care, insisting that medical knowledge could save lives, no matter who you were. Arthur froze for just a second. He was only an invisible janitor, the man who cleaned offices after the executives had gone home. Monica Sterling, meanwhile, was a finance magazine cover star, the kind of woman who could move billions with a single email. Their worlds had never crossed, except for the rare occasions she passed by without sparing him a glance. But Dorothy's words echoed neurological symptoms don't care about class or color. Arthur pushed open the boardroom door. "Mrs. Sterling, you're having a stroke. Don't try to talk. Just listen to me." His voice carried the calm certainty of someone who had watched Dorothy guide countless families through medical crises. Monica tried to object, but her words only slurred further. Panic flickered in her eyes as she realized the severity of her condition. Meanwhile, Arthur dialed 911, adjusting her position to minimize brain damage. Ambulance to Manhattan Tower, 25th floor. Female patient, mid-40s. Classic stroke symptoms, facial droop, left arm weakness, slurred speech. Onset approximately 5 minutes ago. The 911 operator was startled at the precision of a caller identifying himself as a janitor. But Arthur reported every detail like a trained professional. When paramedics arrived, they found Monica properly positioned while Arthur described the progression of her symptoms in exact detail. One EMT whispered to another, "This guy knows more neurology than half the nurses I've worked with." At the hospital, Monica received treatment in time and narrowly escaped death. Arthur, however, returned to his shift as though nothing had happened. To him, he was still the invisible night janitor, the one who kept the building running while the powerful slept in their mansions. Arthur didn't know that night would alter his life forever, in ways even Dorothy could never have foreseen. And Monica Sterling was about to learn that prejudice medicine and the true meaning of competence would rewrite everything she believed about human worth. If you're following this story of how knowledge breaks through the walls of wealth, stay tuned, because one simple act of humanity is about to expose a conspiracy threatening not just Monica's life, but the very structure of power she represented. The next morning, Arthur walked into work expecting everything to return to normal. Instead, an unpleasant surprise awaited him in the staff locker room, an official warning notice taped to his locker. Violation: unauthorized use of executive elevator during shift. Unauthorized access to office areas after hours. The signature belonged to Wilson Carter, head of security, the kind of man who measured his own worth by how miserable he could make others. Arthur calmly folded the paper. 15 years of spotless service, not a single complaint, and now he was punished for saving the CEO's life. The irony wasn't lost on him. In the corporate world, even when you did the right thing, you could still be branded wrong, simply because you were the wrong person. What troubled Arthur more wasn't the warning itself, but the timing. How had Carter known so quickly about the previous night? The hospital followed strict confidentiality rules, and the ambulance team had no reason to inform the company. Someone had been watching Monica Sterling's every move. Later that morning, Arthur discreetly observed the 25th floor. 2 hours and Dr. Patterson, Monica's personal physician, arrived later than usual, his expression caught between irritation and genuine fear. Through the glass doors, Arthur saw him arguing heatedly with Wilson Carter. A memory of Dorothy struck like a hammer, Jammy, she would often say as they analyzed case studies over dinner. When sudden neurological symptoms hit a high-pressure executive, the first question isn't why now, it's who benefits if that person can't work anymore. Arthur had assumed Monica's stroke was just the product of stress and exhaustion. But the tense exchange between Carter and Dr. Patterson planted a seed of doubt. A seed Dorothy, if she were alive, would have spotted instantly. A good doctor doesn't panic when a patient survives an emergency. A good doctor rejoices. That afternoon, Arthur received an unexpected call. Monica Sterling wanted to see him in her office. When he reached the 25th floor, the CEO looked much stronger, though her eyes were sharp and searching in a way they hadn't been the night before. Arthur Wright, she gestured for him to sit across from her. I want to thank you personally for what you did last night. The doctors said your quick reaction saved my life. I only did what any decent person would do, Mrs. Sterling. Monica studied his face with growing interest. The paramedics were impressed with your medical knowledge. Where did you learn neurology? Arthur hesitated. Mentioning Dorothy always brought a sting of grief. But Monica's gaze told him this wasn't just polite curiosity. My wife was a neurology nurse, 20 years at Chicago General. She taught me how to recognize the emergency signs. She passed away in an accident 5 years ago. Monica's eyes softened, filled now with genuine empathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. She paused, carefully weighing her next words. Arthur, may I ask you something unusual, in your unofficial medical opinion? Did my symptoms last night seem natural to you? The question stunned him. Monica Sterling, one of the most powerful women in the nation, was asking a janitor for a medical opinion on her own health. Stranger still was the way she asked it, as though she already suspected something was wrong. With all respect, Mrs. Sterling, that's something you should discuss with your physician. Her response came quickly, edged with frustration. Dr. Patterson says it was nothing more than stress from executive duties. He prescribed sedatives and told me to take a vacation. Arthur felt a familiar chill run down his spine. Dorothy, his late wife, had always said that good doctors investigate the causes of stroke in younger patients as if their very lives depended on it. Because in truth they did. Prescribing sedatives to someone who had just suffered a neurological event wasn't just a medical mistake. It could be considered a crime. Mrs. Sterling, Arthur said carefully, before last night, had you ever experienced anything similar? Monica hesitated. She knew that strokes in people in their 40s rarely came out of nowhere. There were usually warning signs, overlooked, misunderstood, or dismissed. The silence stretched as she weighed the meaning behind his question. Finally, she nodded slowly. Chronic headaches, occasional dizziness, sometimes a kind of mental fog. Dr. Patterson always said it was just job stress. Arthur kept his face calm, but inside Dorothy's warning rang like an alarm bell. With those symptoms, any competent neurologist would have ordered advanced testing. Patterson's dismissal could mean only one of two things, either gross incompetence or deliberate intent. When Arthur left Monica's office 15 minutes later, Wilson Carter was waiting in the hallway, making no effort to hide the fact that he was watching. The smile he gave Arthur carried an unspoken threat. We know you're meddling where you don't belong. That night, as Arthur cleaned the empty offices, Dorothy's voice echoed in his mind. Jammy, in medicine, there are no coincidences. When you see patterns that don't fit, someone is making them happen. What if Monica's stroke wasn't stress-induced at all? What if someone was deliberately compromising her health? Arthur thought about the warning slip in his locker, about Carter's argument with Dr. Patterson, about how both of them seemed to know far too much about what should have been confidential. For 15 years, Arthur had been the invisible man, the janitor nobody noticed. But now he realized invisibility could become the sharpest weapon against those who believed themselves untouchable, especially when they underestimated the observation, intuition, and, if necessary, the courage to expose the truth of someone they thought insignificant. Arthur spent the next 2 weeks doing what a decade and a half of night shifts had trained him to do: be present while seeming absent, see everything while remaining unseen. What he uncovered confirmed his worst fears about Monica Sterling's condition. Dr. Patterson visited Carter's office 3 times a week. Each time he carried the same brown leather briefcase and never once let it leave his side. One evening, Arthur happened to park his cleaning cart near a door left slightly ajar and overheard a fragment of conversation that froze his blood. The tests still show progressive cardiovascular decline, Patterson whispered. But I've kept the official reports within normal ranges as agreed. Perfect, Carter replied. How long do you estimate with the medication disguised as vitamins? I'd say we have about 6 more months before the next major episode, and that one will likely be the end. Arthur had to grip the cart to keep from collapsing. They weren't just neglecting Monica's health, they were actively poisoning her. Dorothy's words returned. The darkest kind of medical crime is when it's committed by the very people sworn to heal. The missing piece came from Marcus Johnson, a daytime HVAC technician at the building. Marcus was 10 years younger than Arthur, an Afghanistan veteran who had studied electronics in the military and now worked contract jobs to support his 3 children. "Hey, you need to hear this," Marcus whispered during shift change on a Friday night. "I was replacing filters on the 25th floor when I heard Carter on the phone. He was talking about Sterling Industries stock, about buying up huge quantities before a leadership change he said was guaranteed to happen." Arthur felt the final pieces click into place. Wilson Carter wasn't just complicit, he was the architect of the entire scheme. If Monica died or became incapacitated as head of security and a member of the emergency board, Carter would temporarily control the company. With insider knowledge of the leadership shakeup, he could manipulate the stock market and walk away with millions. Marcus, Arthur said cautiously, "Do you still have contacts in the military, people who know how to handle documents, evidence?" Marcus looked him straight in the eye, sharp with the survivor's instinct of a soldier. "Depends what you need." Why Arthur made a decision that would change everything. Over the next 2 hours, he told Marcus the whole story: Monica's stroke, the medical conspiracy, Carter's plan, the suspicion of prolonged poisoning. Marcus listened intently, asking short, precise questions, the kind of assessment only a trained soldier could make. Finally, he said, "This is attempted murder combined with large-scale financial fraud, but proving it won't be easy. Do you have hard evidence?" "Not yet. But I know where to get it." The plan they crafted was risky, yet simple and elegant. Marcus would use his legitimate access to the building's systems to secretly install recording devices in Carter's and Patterson's offices. Arthur, with his deep knowledge of everyone's schedules and habits, would coordinate the timing, weekends when security was at its weakest. "There's one thing I don't get," Marcus said as they studied blueprints of the ventilation system. "Why didn't they fire you after the warning a man who saved the CEO should have been celebrated, not hunted?" Arthur had wondered the same. Firing me right after saving her would have looked suspicious. Keeping me around in the shadows is safer, easier to control, easier to watch. They think I'm just some clueless janitor who happened to spot stroke symptoms by chance. The arrogance of Carter and Patterson was staggering. In conversations Arthur sometimes overheard, they casually referred to him as the lucky janitor, a man too ignorant to grasp what was really happening. They even laughed at the thought of him meddling in matters beyond his station, certain he wasn't smart enough to be a problem. They were dead wrong. The first trial run of their plan came on a Monday night. While Arthur meticulously cleaned the 25th floor, Marcus worked silently through the ventilation shafts, planting miniature microphones and cameras in their targets' offices. His military precision was impressive. In just 45 minutes, he had established a surveillance network that would have taken a private investigator weeks to set up. "All set," Marcus whispered over their newly purchased comms device. "Now we just wait for them to hang themselves with their own words." And they didn't have to wait long. The very next Wednesday night, Carter and Dr. Patterson held a meeting that was recorded in full. The content was worse than anything Arthur had ever imagined. Not only did they confirm the slow poisoning of Monica, but they also discussed in detail how to increase the dosage to speed up the process. "The press will eat this up," Carter sneered. "A young, successful female CEO dying tragically from work-related stress. It'll spark a nationwide debate on mental health in the corporate world. A perfect smokescreen for a seamless transfer of power." Arthur listened to the recording 3 times, and each time his resolve deepened. Dorothy had always said, "Knowledge without action is complicity." It was time to act. Carter and Patterson had no idea that their very words had signed their own death warrants. And the stupid janitor they had dismissed was about to prove that true intelligence doesn't come from diplomas or social status, but from the fusion of knowledge, determination, and the most dangerous weapon of all, absolute conviction that you are standing on the side of justice. As he carefully organized the evidence that would destroy them both, Arthur smiled for the first time in weeks. Dorothy would have been proud. He wasn't just saving a life, he was about to expose a conspiracy that would shake the entire business world. The medicine Dorothy had taught him was now being used not only to heal, but to deliver justice no courtroom could ignore. The following Wednesday would be remembered as the day arrogance finally paid its price. Arthur came to work carrying something Carter and Patterson would never expect: 3 USB drives containing 92 hours of recordings, 15 falsified medical reports carefully scanned, and financial evidence analyzed in detail by a former military accountant. Marcus had done far more than install surveillance gear. His military contacts included financial crime experts who dissected Carter's stock purchases with the precision of an intelligence operation. The results were devastating: 341 suspicious trades, everyone perfectly aligned with Monica's medical episodes. But Arthur's plan went beyond simply turning the evidence over to the authorities. Carter and Patterson needed to understand that they had underestimated the wrong man, and they needed to understand it in the most humiliating way possible. Phase 1 began during Sterling Industries' monthly board meeting. Monica, still recovering and faithfully taking the vitamins Patterson prescribed, presided over the meeting with 15 directors reviewing quarterly reports. Carter sat on her right, radiating the smug confidence of a man who believed the future was already his. Arthur entered the boardroom with his cleaning cart as he had hundreds of times before. But this time, while discreetly emptying the trash, he placed a sealed envelope on Monica's stack of documents. When she opened it, she found a single typed line: "The vitamins you are taking are not vitamins. Check the bottle. From someone who cares." Monica's expression shifted ever so slightly, but Carter, too engrossed in presenting his financial forecasts, didn't notice. Arthur, watching from across the room, saw her quietly examine the supplement bottle she always carried in her purse. 15 years of living invisible had taught him to read faces like a surgeon, and he knew in that instant Monica had realized something was terribly wrong. Phase 2 unfolded 2 hours later when Dr. Patterson arrived for his routine consultation with Monica. He had no idea that Arthur had planted a directional microphone inside the desk lamp, while Marcus recorded everything from a van across the street. "How are your stress symptoms?" Monica Patterson asked in that counterfeit tone of concern Arthur had always despised. "Are you taking your supplements regularly as I instructed?" "Regularly," Monica replied, but her voice carried a note of suspicion that made Patterson shift uncomfortably in his chair. "In fact, doctor, I'm considering seeking a second opinion just to be certain we're on the best treatment plan." Arthur saw the flicker of panic cross Patterson's face through Marcus's hidden camera feed. "That won't be necessary, Monica. Your test results show steady progress. Another opinion would only complicate things unnecessarily." How interesting, Monica cut him off, opening a desk drawer. "Because today I received this." She placed the anonymous envelope and the supplement bottle on the desk. "Someone claims these aren't vitamins. What would you say if I had them tested at an independent lab?" Patterson's face turned ashen. "Monica, you can't seriously give weight to an anonymous note. Clearly this is an attempt to sabotage your treatment. A disgruntled employee, nothing more. So you wouldn't object if I tested them then?" Her voice was sharp, the voice of a seasoned CEO. Of course not, but it would be a waste of time and resources. I assure you." Monica raised her hand, silencing him. "Dr. Patterson, in 15 years as CEO, I've learned one thing: when someone insists I not check into a problem, that's exactly when I need to check." Phase 3 was executed with military precision. While Patterson scrambled to talk Monica out of testing the pills, Marcus simultaneously transmitted the entire evidence package to the FBI, the SEC, the State Medical Board, and the Chicago Tribune. Arthur had insisted Monica deserved the truth before the story went public. She needed to know exactly how her life had been manipulated before the world knew it too. So at 5 p.m. that Friday, Arthur knocked on Monica's office door carrying the briefcase that would change everything. "May I come in, Mrs. Sterling? There's something important you need to know." Monica looked up immediately, recognizing the janitor who had now saved her life twice. "Of course, Arthur. In fact, I wanted to thank you again, and I also want to know, how did you find out about these supplements?" Arthur set the briefcase on her desk with the solemnity of a man performing a ritual. "Mrs. Sterling, what I'm about to show you will shock you. But you need to see it before the newspapers print everything tomorrow morning." Over the next 45 minutes, Arthur laid out the evidence piece by piece, building his case with methodical precision. The recordings of Carter and Dr. Patterson discussing a slow poisoning, the falsified medical documents, and the financial transactions proving Carter had manipulated the stock market based on Monica's deliberately declining health. Monica sat in silence, listening. Her expression shifted from disbelief to horror, and finally to a cold fury, something Arthur recognized instantly. It was the restrained anger of someone accustomed to holding power in their hands. "They thought I was just some ignorant janitor," Arthur said as he concluded. "A man lucky enough to notice the signs of a stroke, but not educated enough to understand what was really happening." "And you pieced it all together yourself," Monica whispered, studying the files with the same razor-sharp focus she usually reserved for billion-dollar deals. "Arthur, you've saved my life 3 times. Twice from medical emergencies and once from a conspiracy." What happened next went beyond Arthur's idea of personal revenge. Monica Sterling was not merely a successful CEO, she was a corporate strategist who had built an empire by dismantling those who dared betray her. On Saturday morning, when Carter walked into the office for an emergency meeting, Monica had called. He didn't just find her waiting. He found FBI agents, representatives from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and an investigator from the State Medical Board. "Wilson," Monica said, her voice as cold as a termination notice, "I'd like to introduce you to some people who are very interested in your after-hours activities." Carter tried to maintain his composure, but Arthur, watching remotely through a hacked security feed Marcus had set up, saw the exact moment arrogance gave way to panic. "Monica, what is going on here? If this is about some ridiculous accusation..." Monica smiled, humorless. "Wilson, they're not here to hear accusations. They're here to arrest you on the basis of solid evidence: attempted murder, financial fraud, and market manipulation." Agent Martinez began reading Carter his rights as the man shouted desperate claims of innocence, sounding like someone who had just realized the game was over. At the same time, Dr. Patterson was arrested in his office, caught mid-keystroke while trying to erase incriminating files. The click of the handcuffs ended his career in a single instant. Phase 4, the final phase, proved the most satisfying. On Monday, the Chicago Tribune ran the headline across its front page: "Hero Janitor Exposes Plot to Murder Millionaire CEO." The story of Arthur, a working-class black janitor who used medical knowledge inherited from his late wife to save a white CEO's life, then uncovered a corporate conspiracy, captivated the nation's imagination. But the real turning point came when Monica held a press conference in front of dozens of cameras. Not only did she confirm every detail of Arthur's story, she also announced on the spot his appointment as Sterling Industries Director of Corporate Security and Integrity, with a $200,000 annual salary. Arthur Washington, she told the cameras, has proven that ability, integrity, and intelligence do not depend on a degree or social status. They depend on character, and his character is extraordinary. From behind bars, Carter and Patterson watched the press conference. They realized they had not only been destroyed legally, but publicly humiliated by the very janitor they once believed they could control forever. The irony was perfect. While Carter faced 25 years in federal prison for attempted murder and securities fraud, and Patterson lost his medical license and received 15 years behind bars, Arthur was being celebrated nationwide as a hero, proof that true wisdom comes from the heart, not a title. Dorothy would have been proud. The medical knowledge she had passed to Arthur hadn't only saved lives, it had exposed corruption that could have cost countless more. And the man she loved had finally received the recognition he deserved: justice, not only served, but served spectacularly. 6 months later, Arthur Washington sat in his new office on the 26th floor of Sterling Industries, with a panoramic view of Chicago and a nameplate on the door reading Director of Corporate Security and Integrity. The man, once regarded as invisible, now led a team of 15 investigators dedicated to rooting out corporate fraud. The irony was sweet. The very building where he had pushed a mop for 15 years now welcomed him as an executive, complete with a private desk and a $2 million budget to implement security protocols other companies would soon model. Marcus Johnson, now promoted to coordinator of electronic security, entered with a report on the new surveillance systems they had designed. "Can you believe we're actually here?" he said, staring out at the glass towers. "Remember when you used to clean these offices? I remember every corner of this building," Arthur said with a smile, signing off on scholarship paperwork Monica had established in Dorothy's name. "The difference is now I can change it from the inside." The Dorothy Washington program offered full medical scholarships to underprivileged students, focusing on neurology and emergency medicine. Within 2 years, it had funded 120 young people, many of them children of janitors, guards, and laborers' kids who had never dreamed of becoming doctors. Meanwhile, Wilson Carter served out his 25-year sentence at a federal prison in Illinois, quickly learning that corporate arrogance earned no respect behind bars. His assets were seized to compensate the victims of his stock manipulations, leaving him reliant on public defenders, the very system he had once scorned. Dr. Patterson, stripped of his license and reputation, ended up selling medical equipment, earning a fraction of his former income. His name was so tarnished that no hospital in America would hire him, not even in an administrative role. The medical community made sure he would never again endanger lives. As for Monica Sterling, she transformed Sterling Industries into a national model of corporate integrity. Under her leadership, the company implemented independent medical oversight for executives, anonymous reporting systems, and strict anti-discrimination policies. The stock price tripled within 2 years, proving that ethics and profit could thrive together. Arthur Monica said as she stepped into the office for their weekly meeting, "I just got a call from the White House. They want you to testify before Congress on corporate health care reform." Arthur nodded, already accustomed to the recognition his story had brought him. Books had been written about the case, documentaries produced, and medical schools were now using his story to teach the importance of clinical observation, independent of formal degrees. What gave Arthur the greatest sense of fulfillment, however, were the letters. Hundreds of ordinary workers had written to tell him that his story had inspired them to trust their own knowledge, to speak up against injustice, and to believe that competence was not tied to social rank. "Do you know what Dorothy would say about all this?" Arthur asked, his gaze lingering on the photograph that now sat in a polished silver frame on his desk, replacing the simple plastic one he had carried for years. "That this medicine saved more than one life," Monica replied. "It saved the truth." Arthur nodded, reflecting on how the knowledge he had inherited from his wife had grown into social justice, and from there into systemic transformation. Carter and Patterson had believed they were manipulating an ignorant janitor, but they had made a fatal miscalculation, underestimating the strength of a man who knew exactly who he was and how much he was worth. The lesson from that story was crystal clear. True intelligence does not come from diplomas hanging on a wall, but from the union of knowledge, character, and the courage to act when necessary. Arthur had proven that ability does not recognize skin color, class, or status. It only recognizes truth. Today, when young workers face discrimination or injustice, many often ask themselves, what would Arthur Washington do in this situation? And the answer is always the same. Observe, learn, document, and then act with the surgical precision of someone who knows that the sweetest revenge is the kind of success an oppressor could never have imagined. If this story of how knowledge and willpower can shatter prejudice has touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove justice, when rightly delivered, not only prevails, but transforms the very world around us. Thank you.